Have you ever wondered why it seems like no one truly important in the investing world listens to you when you're starting out? Why do experienced mentors, successful investors, and people who have already built wealth simply ignore messages, comments, or requests for guidance from those who are just beginning their journey? If this has ever happened to you, stick with me until the end, because what you're about to discover might surprise you, and perhaps even change the way you see the financial game. At the beginning of building wealth, the feeling is almost always the same. You study, consume content about personal finance, investments, wealth mindset, ask sincere questions. And yet, it seems like you're talking to yourself. It's like knocking on a heavy steel door that never opens. And this generates frustration, doubt, and even that silent question that nobody likes to admit. Am I not good enough for this world? Have you ever experienced this? The truth is harsh, but it needs to be said. The world of wealth accumulation doesn't operate based on good intentions, emotional effort, or a willingness to learn. It operates based on clear signals of financial value, consistency, and track record. When you're still a beginner, without significant capital, without concrete milestones, you're not seen as someone ready for certain conversations. Not because you lack potential, but because at that level, the system simply doesn't react to potential. It reacts to proof. This is where many people get confused. Many believe that mentors ignore beginners out of arrogance, ego, or lack of empathy. But the reality at the shark gate is different. Experienced mentors have seen hundreds, sometimes thousands, of motivated people who never truly executed anything. They've heard promises, grandiose plans, and loose ideas. What they seek isn't talk, it's traction. And traction, in the financial world, starts with real numbers. While you're still far from milestones like 250K accumulated, the market sees you as someone in training, still learning to deal with risk, discipline, and long-term decisions. This isn't a condemnation, it's a stage. But nobody explains this clearly to you. On the contrary, they sell the idea that all you need is to want it, ask for help, or connect with the right people. But these right people live in an environment where the cost of time is too high for bets without a track record. Perhaps while you watch this video, you're feeling exactly that. The impression that there's another world happening, full of opportunities, private conversations, access, and strategies that never reach you. And that feeling isn't paranoia. It's real. There is indeed an invisible line separating those who are still trying to break in from those who have already begun to be taken seriously. Stay with me, because in the next part, we're going to cross that line and understand why this game changes completely after certain numbers start appearing in your path. And perhaps the most curious thing of all is realizing that this feeling of being on the outside isn't individual. It's silent, almost invisible, but shared by many people who are seriously trying to build wealth. Therefore, while you listen to me talk about this door that seems never to open, I want to invite you to do something simple, yet very powerful. If this topic resonates with you, leave a comment below about what has touched you most so far. Tell me if you've ever tried to approach the world of investing, if you've ever felt the frustration of not being taken seriously, or if you're still exactly at that point in your journey. Your experience might be exactly what someone else, watching silently, needed to read. And if, in some way, this video is putting into words something you've always felt but never been able to explain, consider leaving a like. This isn't just a technical gesture for the algorithm. It's a way of saying, this matters. This topic needs to continue. Your participation here is what makes this channel grow and reach more people who are also trying to understand how wealth building and asset accumulation really work. If you feel this kind of conversation is missing, if you want to continue exploring this less discussed side of personal finance, subscribe to the channel, not as an automatic click, but as a sign that you want to walk together, understand the game more clearly, and not get stuck on the empty promises that everyone repeats. Here, the idea is to build a community of people who are willing to face reality, even when it's uncomfortable. And while you comment, like, or subscribe, keep this question in mind. If this door truly exists, what exactly makes someone be perceived as worthy of passing through it? Because from here on out, things start to get even more interesting. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because there's a precise point in this journey that almost no one explains clearly. Point that isn't symbolic, motivational, or random. It's practical, measurable, and completely changes how you are perceived. When we talk about 250K, we're not just talking about accumulated money, we're talking about transformation, about mindset, about repeated decisions over time that have left clear traces. Up to this point, you're still seen as someone who is learning. Even if you study, even if you have good ideas, even if you consume advanced content, the system still sees you as someone testing the waters. But when you cross that milestone, something silent happens behind the scenes. The conversation changes. The perspective changes. The access changes. Not because you suddenly became smarter, but because you proved in practice that you know how to handle risk, patience, and the real impact of financial choices. Reaching 250K is the point where you stop being theory and become evidence. It's when your decisions have already cost you dearly, your mistakes have already hurt, and your victories have already demanded discipline. This creates a kind of invisible language that only those who have reached that point can speak. Mentors recognize this immediately. They don't need to ask much. The numbers tell the story for you. They show that you have already traveled a journey, overcome phases of doubt, resisted tempting shortcuts, and begun to understand the game in depth. The so-called shark door doesn't open out of kindness, but out of compatibility. On the other side are people who think about allocation, protection, growth, and long-term strategy. Conversations about complex decisions, costly mistakes, limited opportunities, and moves that don't make sense for someone still trying to survive financially. When you reach 250K, you begin to understand not only what's at stake, but the weight of each choice. And that changes everything. There's also a hidden truth here. This value acts as a natural filter. It eliminates the merely curious and lets through only those who have developed consistency. It's not about being rich. It's about having a track record, about having already felt the emotional impact of seeing numbers rise and fall without panicking, about having already learned that wealth isn't built on emotion, but on repeated, often tedious decisions that almost no one sees. Therefore, after that point, doors begin to open almost discreetly. Invitations appear, conversations deepen, the tone changes. You stop hearing only generic advice and gain access to practical revelations, behind-the-scenes insights that don't make sense to someone who is just starting out. It's not an easier world, but it's a clearer world, more direct, more real. And perhaps most importantly, understand that this milestone is not an end, but a different beginning. A beginning where responsibility increases, where decisions weigh more heavily, and where the game stops being about proving something to others and becomes about protecting and expanding what you have built. That's exactly where everything starts to gain another layer of depth. If this resonates with you, comment below. I'm on this journey too. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject because there's a hidden truth here that many people misinterpret. When it's said that mentors don't want to waste time with beginners, it sounds harsh, almost cruel. But in practice, it's not about disdain. It's about efficiency, impact, and maturity. Mentors who have already built wealth, who have already gone through market cycles, costly mistakes, and difficult decisions, live at a different pace. Their time is allocated where there is a greater chance of real transformation. These people have already explained the basics countless times. They've talked about discipline, emotional control, long-term vision, common mistakes, obvious pitfalls. And what experience has taught is simple. Most people don't execute, not for lack of intelligence, but for lack of structure, consistency, and emotional resilience. That's why, when a mentor looks at someone who hasn't yet built anything concrete, they don't just see potential, they see uncertainty. And the cost of investing energy in uncertainty is too high at this level of the game. When you achieve some degree of success, especially after milestones like 250K, the perspective changes completely. It's no longer about ideas, it's about decisions. It's no longer about motivation, it's about strategy. You've already done the hard work. You've already dealt with frustration, resisted impulses, and understood that growing wealth is a silent journey, full of invisible choices. This creates immediate confidence. The mentor knows that, by guiding you, there's a high chance of real impact because there's a foundation to apply the method. There's also a little discussed factor. Mentors don't want to be mere repetition. They want to be leverage. They step in when they can accelerate, refine, and correct course, not when they need to teach the obvious. This doesn't diminish the beginner. It simply reveals the stage each person is at. From a certain point, the conversation stops being about what to do and starts being about how to do it better. And this transition only happens when you've already demonstrated focus and perseverance in the real world. That's why so many doors seem to open almost suddenly. It's not luck. It's not favoritism. It's level compatibility. When someone realizes that you've already faced difficult decisions, felt the weight of risk, and still persevered, it generates automatic respect. The mentor understands that you value guidance because you've already paid the price of learning on your own, and that completely changes their willingness to help. This realization creates a sense of urgency for those who understand the game, because it becomes clear that it's not just about accumulating money, but about reaching a level where your journey speaks for itself, where your path generates credibility without you needing to prove anything with words, where previously inaccessible behind-the-scenes information begins to make sense, because now you have the emotional and mental context to absorb these revelations. And all of this creates a stark contrast. While some continue to wait for attention before building, others build first and naturally become sought after. This is one of the quietest and most powerful transformations in wealth accumulation, and it changes not only access, but also how you see yourself within the game. If this resonated strongly with you, comment, "This makes sense to me." Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because there's a powerful myth that needs to be dismantled calmly and honestly. The myth of quick success. The seductive idea that someone wakes up one day, discovers a magical investment, a secret mentor, or a hidden opportunity, and suddenly everything changes. This narrative is comforting because it takes the weight off the journey, but it's also one of the biggest mental traps for those who truly want to build something solid. What almost no one mentions is that reaching 250K followers is rarely glamorous. There are no daily applause, no constant external validation, and most of the time, no one is watching. It's a long sequence of small, often tedious decisions made when no one is watching. It's choosing consistency when it would be easier to look for shortcuts. It's maintaining discipline when results seem too slow. This is the invisible part of the journey, the behind-the-scenes work that doesn't appear in screenshots, pretty graphs, or inspiring social media stories. And it is precisely this process that shapes the mindset necessary for the next level. Each mistake corrected, each impulse controlled, each decision made with rationality instead of emotion creates an internal foundation that is difficult to explain, but easy to recognize. When someone reaches 250K, they don't just arrive with money. They arrive with scars, lessons learned, and a much more realistic perception of the game. This changes how that person views risk, time, and the impact of their choices. True success doesn't happen in dramatic leaps. It happens in almost imperceptible steps, repeated long enough to generate transformation. That's why this milestone acts as a watershed moment. Those who reach this point have already been tested by frustration, impatience, and comparison. They've felt like giving up. They've questioned whether they were on the right path, and yet they continued. This silent persistence is what truly qualifies someone to be taken seriously. There's a hidden truth in all of this. The process is worth more than the number itself. The number only signals that the process was respected. Mentors understand this instinctively. They know that guiding someone who has gone through this journey is very different from guiding someone who still believes in quick fixes. The one face conversation changes because the foundation is different. The decisions become more strategic, the questions deeper, the understanding more mature. Following this path without haste is not a sign of slowness, it's a sign of solidity. Each completed phase builds something that no amount of money can directly buy. Clarity. Clarity about limits, about patience, about one's own behavior in the face of pressure. And this prepares the ground for a type of growth that doesn't depend on luck, but on structure. If this part of the journey made sense to you, comment below. I'm on this journey too. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject because this is where a lot of things really start to make sense. After 250K followers, that constant feeling of hitting invisible walls begins to disappear. What once seemed like a cold, inaccessible wall gradually reveals itself as a door. And it's not a wide open door, full of spotlights. It's a discreet, almost silent, but real opening. kind of change you feel more in the environment than in words. On the other side of that shark gate, the world isn't magical, nor is it easy, but it is different. Conversations cease to be superficial. Opportunities cease to be generic. You gain access to people who no longer talk about making money fast, but about preservation, expansion, intelligent allocation, and decisions that take years to mature. It's an environment where the mindset is different, where every choice has an impact, and where each person's journey carries weight and context. Mentors at this level don't offer shortcuts. They offer clarity. They help you see risks you didn't even notice before, revealing behind-the-scenes details that only make sense to those who have experienced the game firsthand. It's not about telling you what to do, but about showing you what to avoid, where to protect yourself, when to advance, and, most importantly, when not to move. This type of guidance only works because you already have something to lose, and that completely changes the dynamic. Opportunities also change subtly. They don't arrive announced. They don't come wrapped in promises. Often they arise in private conversations, in sincere exchanges, in referrals that only happen because there is implicit trust. You begin to realize that access doesn't depend solely on capital, but on the kind of path you've built up to that point. Your history begins to precede you. Your past decisions speak for you even before you open your mouth. There's a very strong internal transformation at this point. Anxiety decreases. The urge to rush loses its power. You understand that you don't need to prove anything to anyone. The focus shifts from the external to the structural. You start playing a longer, more strategic game, more aligned with who you've become along the way. And that attracts people of the same caliber, who think about impact, not immediate validation. The future that unfolds after reaching 250K isn't about instant luxury, but about options. Real options. Freedom of choice. The ability to say no. The ability to wait. The ability to make decisions with less emotional noise. That's the real prize that almost no one explains. And when you realize that, you understand that all the previous effort wasn't just to reach a number, but to become someone capable of sustaining what comes next. If this vision of what lies on the other side of the door resonated with you, comment below. This makes sense to me. If you've made it this far, it's because this conversation touched on something real in your journey. Maybe it helped you organize your thoughts. Maybe it helped you name feelings you've been experiencing for a while. And that's exactly why it makes sense to continue together here. Subscribe to the channel to follow this type of content in more depth, without empty promises and unrealistic shortcuts. Just honest conversations about decisions, mindset, and building wealth in the real world. If this message was for you, leave a comment saying, "I'm with you until the end." This helps me understand who is truly walking this path together, and also creates a space where other people can recognize themselves in this same journey. And if at any point you felt a connection with what was said, leave a like as a silent signal that this type of content needs to continue to exist. There's a video over here that perfectly complements this topic, delves even deeper into this perspective, and connects to the next level of this conversation. Click and continue with me there.